This is the story of Nana and her rejections. Nana was the kind of beauty that caught eyes and held them. She had smooth, radiant skin that glowed like morning sunlight, gentle brown eyes that sparkled with kindness, and an elegance that seemed woven into her every movement. Yet, her most defining feature was her bald head, a result of alopecia that had plagued her since she was young. To her mother, she was a living masterpiece, perfect in every way. But to the world, Nana's alopecia made her stand out, and not in the way she would have wanted. Nana's mother, a poor woman with barely enough to provide for her family, had sacrificed endlessly to give her daughter a decent life. Though they couldn't afford the best, her mother's love was fierce, and her words were soft reminders of Nana's worth. "You are beautiful, Nana," she would say, holding her daughter close. "You are the most beautiful being on earth." Yet no amount of encouragement could mask the pain that came from society's cruelty. From a young age, Nana's classmates kept their distance, taunting her baldness with unkind names. Teachers rarely intervened, some even whispering about her condition as if alopecia was contagious. Nana's intelligence outshone everyone else's, but even that became a source of pain. One year, a competition was held at her school, and Nana emerged the winner. But the moment she stood on stage, a murmur went through the crowd, and predictably, the teachers dismissed her. They said she wasn't presentable as the school's representative. She was crushed, her brilliance dimmed by prejudice. By the time she reached adulthood, she would always wear her long wig and artificial hair to cover her baldness. Nana's struggle with rejection only deepened. Suitors came and went, each captivated by her beauty and grace. But as soon as she shared her condition, they distanced themselves. Better to be honest, she told herself. But the heartbreaks stacked up. Each goodbye bruised her spirit, leaving her feeling ever more like an outsider in her own skin. There was a time when Nana met a young man named Daniel. He was charming, with a deep, warm laugh and a kindness that seemed genuine. They had met through a friend at a small gathering, and from the moment Daniel's eyes met hers, there was a spark. He pursued her with a sincerity she hadn't seen in others, and for the first time in a while, she felt safe to let her guard down. Daniel would visit her at home, sometimes even bringing little gifts, a book he thought she would like, or flowers he had picked up on his way. They would take long walks together, sharing stories and dreams, and Nana's heart began to hope again. He spoke about the future, hinting at a life they might build together. With him, she began to imagine what it might feel like to love and be loved without reservation, free from the walls she had learned to put up. But as always, the whispers began. Alopecia wasn't a secret one could keep for long, and though Nana had taken to wearing headscarves and hats, people talked. Some muttered behind her back, others sneered openly, as if her baldness diminished her beauty and worth. Word eventually reached Daniel. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, watching the sunset, Daniel turned to her with a different look in his eyes, one she hadn't seen before. His smile faded, replaced by something cold and guarded. "Is it true?" he asked abruptly. Nana blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" I heard that you are bald," he said, his voice harsh. "People are saying you don't have hair because of some disease." His words were clipped, and the softness she had come to cherish was nowhere in sight. Nana's heart sank. Her worst fear had surfaced right in front of her. She looked away, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. But she knew she had to face this. "Yes, Daniel, I have alopecia. I have had it since I was a child. It's something I can't control." Daniel's face twisted into a frown, his gaze shifting as if he couldn't bear to look directly at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" His tone was accusatory, almost angry. "You let me think that you were normal?" "Normal?" Nana repeated, the word echoing painfully in her mind. "Yeah," his voice harsh and unyielding. "I mean, what would people say if they saw us together and found out? I didn't sign up for this. I want a wife who is well and whole." The words hit her like a physical blow, each one sinking into her chest, raw and unfiltered. She had feared rejection before, but to have it voiced with such cruelty was unbearable. She had thought she was past feeling hurt like this, that maybe she was numb to it. But here, she was heartbroken, feeling every sting of his words. Struggling to maintain her composure, she looked at him, her eyes glistening. "I thought you cared about me for who I am," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought you saw beyond appearances." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, as if her tears were something to avoid. "Look, Nana," he said more quietly now. "You are a nice girl, but people talk. I don't want to deal with that. I can't." With that, he stood up, hands in his pockets, and without another word, he walked away, leaving her there alone, shattered and humiliated. Nana sat in the park as the sun dipped below the horizon, her mind reeling with the weight of the rejection. Tears slid down her cheeks, and she didn't try to stop them. She let herself feel the pain fully, realizing once again how people's cruelty could pierce her deepest hopes. When she returned home that evening, her mother was waiting. Sensing immediately that something was wrong, she took Nana into her arms, brushing a hand over her daughter's tear-stained face. "Oh, Nana," her mother said softly. If he couldn't see the beauty that is right here, she placed a hand over Nana's heart, then he doesn't deserve to be with you. In the days that followed, Nana carried the scars of Daniel's rejection, but deep inside, a quiet strength was growing. She realized that her worth was not in how others viewed her, and she vowed to be patient. Someday, she hoped someone would see the beauty her mother always spoke of, someone who would love her without reservation. Nonetheless, she had about 3 other suitors, and she suffered the same rejection in their hands due to the same reason, but she did not relent. Her work life was no easier. Each time she landed a promising job, she would excel quickly, but inevitably, her colleagues would learn about her condition and they would come up with an attitude. The isolation would creep in until she could barely stand to go to work, and eventually she would quit or be forced out. Her mother would be waiting with open arms, her unwavering strength a balm on the wounds Nana couldn't hide. One day, however, things changed. Nana went for an interview at a company she had dreamed of working for. She shined, her intelligence and confidence overwhelming even the toughest questions. The interviewer was so impressed that she was asked to start work immediately. The MD of the company, Mr. Patrick, watched her through the glass of his office with a keen interest. Something about her grace, her calmness, poise, and elegance captured his attention. Over the coming days, he observed her diligence and warmth, unable to ignore the unique beauty she radiated. A few weeks later, Mr. Patrick invited Nana to lunch. Her heart skipped, her pulse raced as she recalled all the past lunches and dinners where rejections had played out. Still, she went, her hands nervously clasped in her lap. They met at a quiet restaurant, and Mr. Patrick smiled at her as they settled into conversation. He praised her intelligence, her dedication, her beauty. She smiled shyly, a glimmer of hope rising, but still she guarded her heart, wary of what would happen next. As weeks turned into months, Mr. Patrick continued to seek her company, sharing stories of his own life and listening to hers. His affection grew, his admiration deepened. She thought of telling him about her condition, but feared that this time the outcome might be the same. Finally, on one of their dates, she summoned a courage to bring it up. Just as she started talking about her condition, Mr. Patrick received a call, glanced at his phone with a tense expression, and excused himself, rushing out of the restaurant, leaving her there. Heartbroken, Nana returned home and cried into her mother's arms, regretting ever trying to open up. She felt the familiar sting of rejection. Her mother consoled her as she cried. But later that night, her phone rang. It was Mr. Patrick, apologizing and asking to visit her. Surprised, she agreed, encouraged by her mother to hear what he had to say. Within minutes, Mr. Patrick arrived, his hands full of gifts and his expression full of warmth. Nana and her mother welcomed him inside. "I am sorry, Nana," he began, explaining that he had rushed out to attend to his mother, who had been taken to the hospital. His voice softened, and he took her hand, looking into her eyes. "Nana, I have loved you from the day you walked into that interview," he said, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "Your beauty, intelligence, and kindness, none of that is defined by your hair or the lack of it." Nana could hardly believe his words. She turned to her mother, who was smiling, her eyes full of tears. "I told you, Nana," her mother whispered. "There would be a man who would see past what others couldn't." From that moment, Nana and Mr. Patrick grew closer, their love strengthened by honesty and acceptance. They entered a courtship that quickly blossomed into marriage, her wedding day filled with a joy she had never thought possible. Those who had once mocked and rejected her looked on, astonished and envious. Nana, with her bald head and radiant smile, walked hand in hand with a man who cherished her for who she really was. In Mr. Patrick, she had found not only a husband, but a partner who saw the beauty her mother always told her was there. And in herself, she found a strength, a new one at that, a reminder that sometimes the love we seek the most is simply waiting for us to believe we deserve it.